Z Junkie. This podcast is on, it's called Grow Up or Die. Yes, Grow Up or Die. What is it that I mean by that? Well, it's once again starting with the principles, starting with the steps. When we're in the steps and we're doing the writing on them, and we're doing the reading on them, and we start doing the writing after the reading, and we share that, with a sponsor or a spiritual advisor, either or, and get them into actual application and make some type of lifestyle out of those principles. The honesty, the acceptance, and the surrender in the first. Get some actual application going on and some lifestyle. The open mindedness, willingness, and the hope of the second, the faith, trust, and commitment of the third. The courage of the fourth, and so on and so on and so on. I've mentioned these principles in other podcasts. These length of podcasts, I need to stick to what it is, the podcast is, and getting some principles in there, obviously. Grow up or die. So what happens is, if I don't grow up in areas, they will die. So if I'm practicing the principles say at work, but I'm not practicing at home, areas of the home are going to die. If I'm practicing them, with my adult children and not with my wife, well, it's going to start to die. My relationship's going to start to die with my wife. If any area I don't start practicing these principles in, it's going to start dying off. Once I'm aware of them, you see, once a God of my understanding makes me aware of an area in which I have no actual application in, that awareness, that 11-step principle, that awareness, once I'm aware, once you know, you can't act like you don't know. Once again, once you know, you can't act like you don't know. So when there's awareness, of an area of my life, which always will be, because this is a lifestyle. There's no graduation here. There's a lifestyle. And there's constant actual application in areas where there is none, and my courage and my faith are low in those areas. And then I get a high level of courage and faith in those areas, and the God of my understanding has me moving on to another area, which I have none. And the self-discipline of the 10th, is used again to start developing some courage and some faith in those areas to practice these principles and experience the freedom as I do in all other areas in which I practice them. It's funny because in my first marriage, or in all relationships, but in my first marriage, I walked around as nothing bothered me. Nothing ever bothered me. Until I blew up every situation about 18 months to 2 years down the line, somewhere in that area, I'd blow up the situation. And codependency. I rely big time on codependency. The more there's a giver and a taker in codependent relationships. There's a giver and a taker. Each is as equally as sick as the other. Once again, there's a giver and a taker. Each is as equally as sick as the other. I was a giver, so I figured if I kept serving and giving, somehow, would change me. But it never changed anything. Every relationship, everything in my life, totally self-destructed by way of choice. So the codependency masked that for a little while. And the fear, of staying in these things, this is what life looked like prior to getting steps in my life, Fear had a grip on me by familiarity. I kept doing the same thing over and over, getting what I always got, but worse. And it was the familiarity and the fear that gripped me by that familiarity of staying in something that was destroying me. It's interesting because never once in any relationships with myself or others or with the God of my understandings, with society, service, anything. I never communicated honestly. Just never communicated honestly. And then I resented you for not understanding me. That's how it always went. So I never grew up. You know what I mean? I never grew up. Like I said in other podcasts, I operated at best like an unhealthy 5-year-old to an unhealthy 12-year-old. More times like an unhealthy 7-year-old. And that's real. That's not just some hard-eat stuff, that sounds good. No, that's how I operated. Because when it came time to getting ways and means of getting and doing more of my solution, remember, don't mistake your solution as the addiction. By way of choice, I make my own or not. The solution is to set my arm. Yours may be that. It may be food. It may be gambling. It might be sex. It might be codependent relationships. It might be alcohol. It might be bum, 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 bum. Yeah, don't ever mistake that solution for the addiction. So, yeah, one big mess once again. So what does it mean to grow up, or die? Well, that's what it looks like when this concept wasn't in my life. Okay, the grow up or die, it originates somewhere between those ages of 2 and 7. You know what I mean? I don't know exact, but somewhere between those ages of 2 and 7. And what it is between those ages, there's things that are outside of ourselves that make us happy and bring us peace and bring us happiness. Okay? The only problem with us addicts is that we never grew up out of that. Okay? And it's interesting because when I ripped off my first Cookie Monster in 2nd grade and was put in the middle of the classroom, ever since then, I've been seeking things outside of myself, consciously ever since then. I've been seeking things outside of myself to fix me, to make me happy. Okay? Somewhere along the line, us addicts miss understanding that somewhere in those ages between 2 and 7, that happiness comes from inside. It comes from inside. And this quest we're on, this self-destructive quest we're on, okay, is so conducive to the addiction by way of choice I make my own or not, being only second in power to the God of my understanding, wanting to suck the life force out of me, okay, until physical death looks good. So somewhere along the line, okay, we miss that. We miss that it comes from the inside. It's not going to come from the outside, and it never does. And we keep exhausting jails, institutions, and death for everything they have to offer until one of them becomes irreversible. So what is that? What is that? Okay, well, it deals with elements of the past, the present, and the future. Okay? As addicts, we resent the past, man. We resent everything. Okay? I talked about resentments in forgiveness podcast pretty deeply. Anyways, we resent the past, okay? We hate the now, okay? And we're in fear of the future. I mean, crippling fear of the future. We hate the now, okay? And we resent everything that's ever happened to us. So we never grow. We never grow because in order to grow up as an addict, okay, I have to start accepting everything in the past, right up until this moment. Now I have to accept this moment. Yeah, so everything up to this moment, okay, I need to get into acceptance. So what's acceptance? Acceptance is in the action of giving consent to receive something or undertake something. So what is that? What is it that I'm giving consent to receive or to undertake? Well, that's a power greater than myself, and that's the God of my understanding's power. It's only through his power, okay, through acceptance, that I have the ability to see anything, okay, and get into acceptance with it and then surrender that to him. So I could start experiencing either relief from it or experiencing the freedom in which it's trying to offer me, whatever that may look like. Okay, so resenting the past has to be replaced with the spiritual principle of acceptance. So you're wondering what defects are? I mentioned a few. Resentment, defect. It's its allegiance with the addiction is there's no other greater allegiance that the addiction has than resentments. Okay, to harbor them will take us out every time. We're going to get them, but we can't harbor them. Okay, so back to growing up or die. So grow up or die. So it happens when I replace acceptance with resentment of everything that's happened in the past. And loving the now, okay, instead of hating it, okay? At least starting to like it until love comes about, okay? Because it's never failed to come about. And start having faith in the future, you know, instead of being crippled by fear, not being able to move, not being able to do anything. So the resentment of the past needs to be replaced with acceptance. The hate of the now needs to be replaced with love. In the future, the fear, the crippling fear that we always have about the future, when we start future tripping, that fear needs to be replaced with faith. Because the faith comes about knowing that if I stay in acceptance, and I love where I'm at, or at least like it, until I can start loving it, okay? Yeah, I can get faith in that. That brings me to really beautiful places. What do I mean by really beautiful places? Well, what else really suffered, okay, when there was resentments for the past and when there was hate for the now and fear for the future? How did I see things? Because the miracles in the perception change. So how did I see things? Like these mountains that surround me, okay? I would have came out here like, yeah, you know, yeah, this is good. Yeah, all right. You know, I'd always take an experience, and before I can experience it, be done with it. So, you know, the mountains are good. Yeah. Well, where's the next watering hole so I can find the guy to get my stuff? Okay. And then years later, months later, yeah, you know, that place, you know, there was nothing to that place, man. The place had nothing for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Never grew up. This place was never supposed to make me happy. Okay, I was supposed to find that within me. This could enhance it, but it was not supposed to fix me. Okay, people are not supposed to fix me. Places are not supposed to fix me. Things are not supposed to fix me. And then I resented everything up till this moment. I hated being in now, and I feared that this miserable life was going to just keep continuing. Grow up or die. I didn't even know I'd experience anything until I replaced those things. You know, my sponsees say, you know, Z, well, what do you mean by grow up? Oh, well, here are those forever non-changing principles that forever flower differently in each one of us. That's a uniqueness in recovery. Okay, so I don't know. So what does that look like? I say to a sponsee, I say, first you got to replace these things. Okay, start getting some actual application in a little lifestyle in like accepting the past. Okay, not hating it now and start loving it, or start liking it until you can start loving it. And replace the future with faith instead of the crippling fear we're so used to. Start to do that, and then you'll experience it yourself, because how that's going to flower up into you is different than me. But that's what growing up is. So we could start experiencing things. You know, in this marriage, I got married in recovery. I had no actual application. I had none. I mean, I walked around like everything was good in every other relationship. So here's a relationship in recovery. I'm rich in principle, right? Like I understand the principles. Awesome, but there's no actual application in communicating with my wife that I'm now married to. Okay, so the first few months that we met, I walked around as I always did. But you know, the fear of getting what I always got, but worse in relationships, okay, because of my own doing, overruled the fear of unfamiliarity. See, I had no actual application, okay, and I had no familiarity. yeah, I was rich in the principles, but I haven't had any actual application, forget about lifestyle, in what it is that I'm speaking about. So what it looked like when I first started talking to her and opening up to her was like, ugh. Yeah, it was just like, I mean, it was all over the place. But man, it sure beat being stuck like Chuck where I was always at in my life, getting what I always got, but worse, especially having understanding of the principles and not willing to apply them. Yeah, once you know, you can't act like you don't know anymore. So, of course, my communication is much better these days, but I had to get with the acceptance that, look, everything is new in recovery. I don't care if there's situations like that when I've been in all my life. I just never been in them with principles that need to be actually applied in them. So a lifestyle could be born up out of that. So I got to look bad, man. I have no idea how to communicate to her in the beginning. Zero. And I needed to accept that instead of resent that fact. Okay? I needed just to get with that. I needed to like where I was until I could love where I was. And between those two, it gives me the faith that something good might keep happening out of these two replacements of the past and the now. Instead of being in a crippling fear, getting what I always got but worse. Because I'm not willing to put any actual application now that I know the principles. In mind. Not in heart and soul yet. Okay? They go from here to here when there's actual application. And lifestyle gets born up out of that. So yeah, it was a real mess. When I first tried to communicate to my wife, and I just had no skills. Because like when I came into recovery, nothing bothered me. You could tell me what color I liked. Okay, sure. If it was gonna make the situation more conducive of finding ways of getting and doing more, I don't care what thing you liked or color you liked or none of that mattered. There was no communication whatsoever. So knowing as a kid, knowing that somewhere between 2 and 7, I missed the boat on understanding that peace and happiness and comfort, it comes from within. Satisfaction comes from within. People, places, and things were never supposed to fix me. And that's all I did all my life was seek people, places, and things. Everything outside of myself, again. It's like choosing a fellowship once again. Whatever your fancy is that suits your solution, yes, your solution. If you're into alcohol, go to one to do that. If you're into sex, go to one to do that. If you're into codependent, go to one to do that. Drugs, it goes on and on and on. It's important. Grow up or die. It's serious. We are self-obsessed. Okay? The heart of our addiction is the self-obsession. The fear that surrounds the self-obsession. Me. Until we suck the life out of ourselves. By never making a choice, because our choice gets taken away. Our choice gets taken away. The only power we have. Once we pick up our only solution that we know before coming into recovery. There is no other choice. There may seem like choices, but when it's ways and means of getting and doing more, that will supersede any other choice, that the intentions that we had to do. Trump that. So grow up or die. Okay? We miss that. We miss that happiness doesn't come from the outside anymore. Somewhere between the ages of 2 and 7. It comes from the inside. because we can never get it from people, places, and things, we resent everything up to this moment. We hate how we're living, and we're crippled by fear to do anything because we're just beat. We're beaten. To replace the acceptance, strike that, to replace the resentment of the past with acceptance, the hating of the now with love, or at least like, until we can begin to love it, and replace the future, okay, that crippling fear with faith, we begin to grow up and we begin to actually experience life. Yeah. Grow up or die. It's no joke, man.